International Fight Week, UFC 276, this weekend from the T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas, Nevada. Your main event for the Middleweight Championship. Stylebender defends his championship against Jared Cannonier in the co-main event. It will be the end of a trilogy. Maybe it won't be their final fight. We'll see. Alexander Volkanovski and Max blessed Holloway. And also, man, a number one contenders fight at middleweight as well. You got Alex Bahia taking on Sean Strickland. This card is stacked from top to bottom. On the early prelims, you got Dricus Du Plessis, Brad Tavares. You got Jim Miller, Bobby Green, Muniz. I mean, Robbie Lawler's in the undercard. This card's so good. Sean O'Malley's on the main card as well. Misha Tate, Lauren Murphy. Of course, Sean O'Malley's opponent, Pedro Munhoz. What a card we've got this weekend from Las Vegas, Nevada. And folks, if you haven't yet, make sure to subscribe button down below for some more UFC here on the channel. We do one of these every single week. We'll be back next week for the main event back in the Apex, Dos Anjos and Physique. So our first fight is going to be Jessica Rose Clark taking on Julia Stoliarenko. Now, I'm recording this video before Surukian and Gamrot on that fight night card on Saturday. So again, if the odds are different by when this video is coming out on Sunday, that's why. And if, you know, the card changes, then, I mean, I hope nothing changes on this card. But if that's the case, that's why, because I'm recording this before the fight night on Saturday. But anyway, our first fight would be Jessica Rose Clark taking on Julia Stoliarenko. I mean, looking at these odds right now, we're not just jumping all over Jessica Rose Clark. I don't see, okay, it's women's MMA, so it gets tough, but I think this is one of the biggest locks in the card. Jessica Rose Clark should not lose to Julia Stoliarenko, a fighter who is 0-4 in the UFC, lost to Leah Letson, Yana Kunitskaya, Julia Avila, and Alexis Davis back-to-back into the Letson fight. She got let go after that fight, and then she worked her way back up by winning a couple fights, and then she got re-signed, lost to Kunitskaya, lost to Avila, lost to Davis. But I mean, she just hasn't looked that good. Like, yeah, she threatened off her back some in the Alexis Davis fight, because that's what Stoliarenko is supposed to be good at. She's supposed to be, you know, a jiu-jitsu player. She's got 9 submission wins out of her, actually, yeah, she's got 9 submission wins, so all of her wins are by submission. But I mean, you saw in her last 3 fights, she's been controlled on the ground. Yana Kunitskaya dominated her on the ground. Julia Avila, I mean, didn't really dominate her on the ground, but submitted her on the ground. And then Alexis Davis held her down for 10 minutes. What's to say Jessica Rose Clark's not going to do the same thing? Like, we know she's capable of doing that. Watch the Jocelyn Edwards fight. 12 minutes of control time for Jessica Rose Clark. She's dominated down there. Again, and I know her last fight, she got submitted by Stephanie Egger. It was something I didn't think was going to happen. That's why I wouldn't say Rose Clark's as big of a lock as she should be. And that's why I think the odds kind of reflect that, with her only sitting at -130. But I don't think she loses this fight. I mean, again, the way she dominated Jocelyn Edwards on the ground, the way she beat Sarah Alpar on the ground, those two fighters, like Sarah Alpar's not the greatest, and Jocelyn Edwards didn't have the best ground game, but man, Julia Stoliarenko hasn't shown any resistance at all on the ground so far in the UFC. She just hasn't. She has not been good. She's 0-4 for a reason. Even Leah Letson was able to control her a little bit on the ground. More of a stand-up fight. And even if this fight is in the feet, Jessica Rose Clark's got way better hands than Julia Stoliarenko. So I don't see a world where Jessica Rose Clark loses. The only way she loses if she gets subbed is Stoliarenko throws up an armbar off her back, because that's Stoliarenko's normally, that is her go-to submission. I believe almost all of her submission wins are by armbar. That's what she will always pull off. So as long as Jessica Rose Clark does not get stuck in an armbar, she should win this fight fairly easily, and she should win it by decision. I think the first fight of the night is pretty easy to pick. We're going Rose Clark by decision. My guy's back. The former KSW champion Dricus Du Plessis is now in for his 3rd UFC fight on Saturday night, and he's been booked against a murderer's row really at 185. Now, 4 fights were scheduled, none of them happened. Andre Muniz, Chris Curtis, Anthony Hernandez, and Kelvin Gastelum. I think the only one that was Du Plessis pulling out was the Muniz fight. He was trying to fight Curtis. Curtis withdrew. Hernandez withdrew. And then Hernandez moved to the Josh Fremd fight. And then Kelvin Gastelum, of course, got injured. That's why that fight didn't happen with him. But, man, I mean, Du Plessis looked good so far in the UFC. Now, I know his first UFC outing, he got off to a very slow start against Marcus Perez. It definitely octagon nerves got to him in that fight, because Du Plessis not throwing anything at the beginning of that fight. It's at the it's in Fight Island over in Abu Dhabi. It's in the Marais Sandhagen card. Eventually, though, he flatlines Marcus Perez and puts him out. Cool. His second fight in the UFC, Du Plessis starts off a little bit slow, but still, he wins the first round against Giles, because Giles just doesn't throw much. Du Plessis takes him down a couple times in the second round. Du Plessis knocks him down after, weathering the storm early at Giles. But again, Giles just wasn't throwing much, because Du Plessis does have pretty good head movement. He doesn't get hit all that much, and that's what's going to be concerning for Brad Tavares in this fight, because Brad Tavares, of course, the opponent, is 2-2 in his last 4 fights, but he's on a 2-fight winning streak with back-to-back wins over the PFL champion Antonio Carlos Jr. and the man who's going to be fighting Antonio Carlos Jr. in the playoffs in Omari Akhmedov. Both those wins were by a decision for Tavares. The Akhmedov fight, he won it by split decision. He was able to outbox Akhmedov on the feet. He was able to get out of the way of the big overhand shots that Omari will throw in his fights, and Tavares ended up winning it again by split decision. And you look at the Antonio Carlos Jr. fight, Shoeface had his moments in the ground, but, Tavares was able to get that fight on the feet. He was able to outstrike Antonio Carlos Jr., and he won that by unanimous decision. Both the Tavares' last fights were on Conor McGregor, Dustin Poirier cards. Obviously, this one is not. But, and before those two fights, he got 2 tough outs in Israel Adesanya on the Ultimate Fighter finale card. He lost by unanimous decision. It was the fight that really propelled Adesanya to the stardom that he's at right now. And then what we thought was going to be the start of the beginning of a future star in Edmund Shabazian at UFC 244. He knocked out Tavares in the first round, of course. Shabazian now is in a pretty rough patch. He's at number 15 in the rankings, but anyways, for Tavares, the guy hits hard. He's a good striker. That's what's won him his last 2 fights. He's got pretty good takedown defense, even though, Duplessis does shoot some, but I think you're going to see a stand-up fight between Tavares and Duplessis. I think it's going to be a good one. Both these guys throw very hard. Duplessis, of course, we've seen the power with that big right cross, knocking out Trevin Giles in his last fight. And again, as of earlier in the week, this fight right now, we got Duplessis at plus money. I'm going to jump all over that. We're going to take Dricus Duplessis by knockout here. I like him early in this fight. It's early in the card. I think Dricus Duplessis, again, still only his 3rd fight in the promotion. I think he's going to get ranked with a victory here. The South African fighter is going to put down Brad Tavares in the first round, and he is going to finish him. I don't think Tavares is going to be able to hit him. Duplessis is pretty good with his head movement. He gets out the way of strikes. Duplessis is going to catch him with the right. He's going to put down Tavares, give him the first round knockout for my guy, Dricus Duplessis. So filling in for Bobby King Green, it is Donald Cowboy Cerrone taking on Jim Miller with a week's notice at 170 pounds. Now, I'll be honest with you, I thought Bobby Miller was going to beat the brakes off of Jim Miller. I thought Bobby Green was probably going to win that fight in the first round by TKO. Now that is no longer happening, as Jim Miller and Cowboy are going at it. And now this one's at 170 pounds. And Jim Miller, who has been fighting at 155 for a while, now gets a Donald Cowboy Cerrone, who's been cutting for 155 for a couple months. He cut the weight down to 55, didn't end up fighting there against Joe Lozon. That fight never actually materialized. And now here we go, it's Miller and Cowboy at 170. I mean, Cowboy didn't want to have to fight at 155. He told Dana that, I'm pretty sure, and he's getting this fight at 170 on relatively short notice. I see a lot of people backing Jim Miller in this one, because when you look at Miller's, last couple fights, you've got the knockout finishes where he goes in there, he knocks out Nicholas Mota, he knocks out Eric Gonzalez in back-to-back fights, but given those two guys just aren't that great. I mean, Eric Gonzalez is the guy, that was his UFC debut. Now he's going to go fight Terrence McKinney, which, that fight's an absolute mismatch. Terrence McKinney's going to finish Eric Gonzalez in less than 2 minutes. And for Nicholas Motta's a guy who's 0-1 in the promotion as well. He's one of the contenders series, probably a bigger name than what Gonzalez is, but still, Mota's going to be fighting a guy in Cameron Van Camp up next, and that's kind of a low-level fight right now in the UFC, Van Camp and Mota. And those are the guys Miller's beat. But it still doesn't, dispute the fact that Cowboy's chin at this point of his career isn't the greatest. Miller should be able to crack it if he does hit Cowboy hard. Cerrone's not known for having great first rounds. And if Jim Miller's able to go out there in that first round, really pressure Cowboy and land some big power shots, it could be trouble for Cerrone. It 100% could be. Wrestling-wise, Cowboy's very capable on the ground. Same with Jim Miller. So, I would have to give a slight edge maybe to Miller down there, but Cowboy isn't horrible on the ground out there. I think we're going to get a striking fight. I think Jim Miller's going to try and knock off Cowboy's head in the first round. I think he's going to try to do that. Will he be able to? I just don't know. I really don't, because it's just a matter of, can Cowboy keep distance? Can Cowboy use his kicks effectively? Can Cowboy just not get hit early in this fight, drag it out to later waters, and eventually try to win this one in the second or the third, or win it by decision? Because when you look at Cowboy's last couple of fights, again, it's the Nico Price draw, it's the loss where he got, standing TKO'd by Alex Morono. You just don't want something like that to happen to Cowboy in this fight, where Miller is blitzing and Miller's the one pushing forward, and Cowboy, can't get started in this fight. When you look at the Cowboy Connor fight, the Gagey fight, he's getting beat in the first round. You're hoping for a performance similar to what happened in the Nico Price fight. I know it was a draw, and I know Price had a point deducted, and if he didn't get a point deducted, Cowboy would have lost that one. But you're hoping for a similar performance to that for Cowboy in this fight against Jim Miller, and you're hoping that, okay, Cowboy's going to have more success later in this fight against Jim Miller than he did against, of course, Nico Price. The weight cutting thing is a little bit concerning. Cowboy, again, just having cut down to 155 2 months in a row, and now we're fighting at 170 against a guy who I wouldn't have thought Jim Miller, a 38-year-old Jim Miller, was going to have insane power like this. But again, you just don't know, is it Jim Miller having power, or is the guys he's fighting are not very good? Well, I don't think that really matters in this case, because it doesn't matter how good Cowboy is. If Jim Miller is able to crack his chin early in this fight, he will be able to put him down. So I don't know what we're going to get out of an old Cowboy and an old Jim Miller. Of course, this is a rematch from their first fight all the way back in the day. You got to go back to a fight night card in Atlantic City, New Jersey, where Cowboy head kicked Miller in the second round as the main event of a Fight Night card. I think the result isn't the exact same from that, but I think Cowboy still wins. I think he's able to outstrike Jim Miller. As long as he doesn't get cracked in the first, then Cowboy will start to take over in the second and third, and I think he'll win 2 rounds in this fight. So I've got Donald Cowboy Cerrone finally picking up another victory in the UFC. He'll win this one, and he'll win 2 rounds in this fight, defeating Jim Miller again by unanimous decision. We'll see if this is it for both guys, but again, I'm going with Cowboy to outstrike and beat Jim Miller for the second time. Andre Muniz is one of the most glossed over fighters in the UFC. He's so good. This guy should be appreciated more. He's a minus 240 favorite. Vegas is giving him, respect here on the line against Uriah Hall for good reason. The guy submitted Jacare Souza. And I don't care at what point in Jacare Souza's career that is at, but if you submit Jacare Souza, you're pretty damn good at Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. You're pretty damn good at that damn thing, right? You're pretty good at jiu-jitsu if you can submit Jacare. Because that's not a matter of, okay, is Jacare washed? Can he not, maybe to the point where he can't move to where he once could, right? But it's not like, oh, you chinned him, right? Like Kevin Holland knocked him out because, okay, Jacare's old, he's taking a lot of punches. No, the guy broke Jacare's arm. I don't care how washed you are. If you break Jacare Souza's arm in 4 minutes in a fight, that's crazy. It's crazy. 3 straight armbar victories for Andre Muniz in the UFC. It starts with the victory over Bartosz Fabinski on the Overeem Sakai card in the Apex in September of 2020. He submitted Bartosz Fabinski in the first round. Then he turns that around, submits Jacare Souza in the first round with an armbar. And then what happens next? Okay, submits Eric Anders in the first round with an armbar. 3 minutes in the fight, UFC 269 in December of this year, or last year. The guy's really good. He's undefeated in the UFC. He's 4-0, the first win, and the only guy to go the distance with them is, surprisingly, Antonio Arroyo. Yes, Arroyo went 15 minutes with them, but, Muniz did pretty well in that fight. Arroyo did have some top control time in that fight, but Muniz won every single round of that fight. Now, his opponent is Uriah Hall. So Hall is coming off the main event loss to Sean Strickland in a fight where Strickland was outboxing him, Strickland was out wrestling him. Strickland beat Uriah Hall to punch everywhere. Just simple. Uriah Hall, it's just a thing. Sometimes the fight wasn't horrible. It was better than, some of Uriah Hall's main event fights, which there's only one other. I'm looking at the Anderson Silva fight, which wasn't very good. Eventually knocked him out, which was good, but Hall's still decent. I still think Hall's a decent striker. But it's just a matter of fact that this fight stylistically doesn't match up well for him, right? You look back at the Antonio Carlos Jr. fight, Shoeface controls him for 11 minutes on the ground. Now, Uriah Hall gets the split decision victory up there in Edmonton, I believe it was. And yeah, he gets the win, but Shoeface is able to take him down. Gegard took him down. Jotko took him down. Sean Strickland took him down 4 times. Andre Muniz is going to be able to take him down. And what happens when you get taken down by Andre Muniz? You get submitted. That's just how good of a jiu-jitsu game Muniz has got. He's so talented in the ground. He's got so many submissions. His armbar is incredible. So if you try to reverse positioning on him, okay, he's off his back. Here comes the armbar. Night over. Tap or snap. Again, the only way Uriah Hall wins this fight, I think, is if he can knock out Muniz quickly. He's going to have to come out with something huge. He's going to have to turn back the clock all the way back to the Ultimate Fighter Season 17 and maybe spinning hook kick him in the face. Or knock him out in 8 seconds like he did to Bubba McDaniel. If he doesn't do that, he's not going to win the fight. It's just that's how good Muniz is. Hall has never been submitted, so it's a first for everything, right? But I think this is going to be the first time. Andre Muniz is going to catch him in something. He'll take down Hall, and then Hall is going to get caught either trying to build back up to his base and get back to his feet, or Muniz is just going to submit him. Just right away. Again, Hall striking isn't horrible, but it just doesn't honestly apply to this fight because, yeah, your striking can be all that great, but what happens when you're on your back against Andre Muniz? Or Muniz, ties up in the clinch, he pulls guard, you're now in his guard. What are you going to do? I don't think Hall has the answers. I think Muniz is that good, and that's why I'm going to go with Andre Muniz to have his 4th straight win in the octagon by submission in the first round. I'm not going to bank on an armbar, but I'm just saying it's entirely possible. Andre Muniz wins this fight by first round submission, now going to 5-0 in the UFC. So by far, the toughest test of Ian Garry's career comes in the form of Gabe Green. Now, Green's a guy who's on a 2-fight winning streak now. Back-to-back wins over the likes of Phil Rowe and Johan Lainus in his last fight, finishing Lainus in the second round. It was a huge victory for him. I thought Lainus was going to beat him. Didn't happen. And, Gabe Green, of course, his first fight in the UFC was his only loss. It's a loss to Daniel Rodriguez, but you know how good D-Rod is. And where are you at, Daniel Rodriguez? Can the guy start fighting again? He's good. He's really good. He's 6-1 in the UFC and he hasn't fought? I don't know where he's at, but still, Daniel Rodriguez beats Gabe Green. He beats him by unanimous decision. It's a good fight over in Jacksonville, actually in Apex on Woodley and Burns. The two guys trade. Rodriguez gets the better of Green, but just shows you how good of a guy Gabe Green is if he's able to stand there with Daniel Rodriguez. And, he didn't win a round, but still, he went 15 minutes with the dangerous guy on the feet in D-Rod. Now, his opponent in Ian Garry. one of the most hyped up prospects in the game right now. He's only 24 years old. He's 2-0 in the UFC. Came over from Cage Warriors. He was the welterweight champion over there before heading on over to the UFC. And he's beat Jordan Williams now, where he knocked him out in the first round in a fight that he was losing until he knocked out Williams. But it's only one round. And then when he beat Darren Weeks by unanimous decision over in Jacksonville in UFC 273, one judge gave one round to Weeks, but the others gave all three to Ian Garry. And Garry was just out striking Darren Weeks for most of that fight. Weeks did take him down in the second round of that fight, and he controlled him in the first, but Ian Garry still did enough to pick up the victory. He didn't knock him out like we thought he was going to, but again, he still won the fight. Gabe Green, though, he's got power. You look at the Lanus fight, an accumulation of strikes did get to Lanus in the second, as Green did put him down, or did finish him on the ground, excuse me. Lanus did drop Green too in that fight, so that happened. But Gabe Green's got good wrestling. He's got a lot of power on the feet, but he's got good wrestling, good submissions. It's a troubling fight, honestly, for Ian Garry. It truly is, because Green's got so many different areas to his game that he can hurt you in. He can hurt you on the feet. He can hurt you on the ground. He can hurt you with his wrestling, with the submissions. It's just a really good test in this point of his career for Ian Garry. And I don't think it's the end of the world if Garry loses this fight. I don't think enough people are putting respect on the name of Gabe Green in this one, because Green is highly capable of winning this fight 100%. But it's a good test for Ian Garry now. And even if he loses this fight, the guy's only 24 years old. They're building him slowly for a reason. Stanford MMA Zone will be taking on Gabe Green. He's 29. It's a good one. I'm not confident at all, but I'm going to take Ian Garry ever so slightly. I think Gary's going to be able to hit Gabe Green early. I think he's just going to put a good shot on him. He's going to crack the chin. But again, I wouldn't be surprised if Green wins the fight. I wouldn't be surprised if Green drags him down, beats up on him, and it's just a dirty fight. It's just a nasty fight where Gabe Green wins a decision and grinds it out. I wouldn't be surprised if that happens at all. I think Gary's going to catch him with something, though. I mean, hell, you look at the fight where it's the pullback right hook that he gets Jordan Williams with, the right straight, that he gets Jordan Williams with. I could see something like that definitely in the first round for Ian Garry. I think he will put a finish on Gabe Green. I think he will finish him in the second by TKO. Again, I could see a win for Green, but I'm going to keep riding the wave of momentum that Garry is seeing right now. His striking is really crisp. His hands are really good. He throws really nice head kicks as well in there. I think Ian Garry, the future, is going to win this one. He's going to get it done in the second round by TKO. So Maycee Barber is back in there. She's currently on a 2-fight winning streak, and you can dispute the fact that she beat Miranda Maverick because she didn't, but still, they gave her the scorecards in that fight. It avoided her from being on a 3-fight losing streak, and now she's built herself to winning back-to-back fights after she just beat Montana De La Rosa by unanimous decision on the Lemos and Andrade card. And now she steps in on relative short notice, but she's had time to prepare for this fight. She steps in for King Casey O'Neill, and they just want to keep feeding Jessica Eye these young prospects who are killers young in the division. I mean, I think what people forget about Maycee Barber is that she's only 24 years old. Maycee Barber is very young. She's still, she's young in this game, and people were down on her because she lost back-to-back fights. The Roxanne Modafferi fight's going to happen. Roxanne's going to win those fights like that. And Alexa Grasso is very good, too. Alexa Grasso, I think, is a fight away from the belt. I don't think she beats Valentina Shevchenko, but I think she gives Shevchenko a test in the feet just because how good of a boxing game Alexa Grasso does have. Now, again, I thought Barber lost the Maverick fight, and that's what compelled me to take Montana De La Rosa over her, but I'm the conductor of the Montana De La Rosa hype train. Maybe I should get off that train because, honestly, it's not going anywhere, but Maycee Barber beats Montana De La Rosa. She just controls her basically throughout the entire fight. It was just a clinch grappling fight. Don't watch it. It was horrible. But Barber wins the fight. Montana doesn't really do much. She just stops the offensive game of Montana De La Rosa. But given De La Rosa's striking is not the greatest, it's the wrestling and it's the ground and pound and it's the kind of jiu-jitsu that wins Montana fights. Anyway, Maycee wins the fight. She's taking on, here we go, evil, here we go, woo-woo, is Jessica Eye. Now, Eye's lost her last 3 fights. One of them was a main event against Cynthia Calvillo, a fight where Calvillo dominated her on the ground, dominated her on the feet, always beat her to the punch because Eye missed weight by like 2.5 pounds going into that fight. I lost to Joanne Wood. It was just a stand-up war basically between those two. Actually, it wasn't a horrible fight, but Joanne wins it. And Joanne Wood's kind of washed at this point of her career too, but she was still able to beat Jessica Eye and get to a number one contenders fight where she, by the way, should have beat Lauren Murphy, but we'll get to Lauren Murphy later in this video. Anyways, Wood wins, and then Eye takes on Jennifer Maia. Jessica Eye outstrikes Jennifer Maia, but it was what, it's a closer fight than you thought it was going to be, but, Maia does the damage and she beats her ever so slightly in the cards. It was closer, though, than what I thought it was going to be at UFC 264. But anyways, in this fight, though, I think Maycee Barber's just going to go for the takedown. She's physically stronger than Jessica Eye. Jessica Eye is 11 years her elder. I think Barber's going to take her down. She's the younger, quicker fighter. Yeah, her hands, maybe they're not what they used to be when you look back when she beat Jillian Robertson, when she beat JJ Aldridge, and when she beat Hannah Cyphers and all that, even though Hannah Cyphers was more of a ground and pound win for her. But I think she should be able to out-wrestle Jessica Eye throughout this entire fight. And I think her ground and pound is going to be huge in this one, because I don't think Eye is going to have too much of an answer to the takedowns, because we've seen many of Eye's last couple opponents take her down. Araujo took her down, Calvillo took her down, technically Joanne Wood even took her down, and I think Macy Barber is going to follow the game plan that Cynthia Calvillo put out there. Mix up the striking with the wrestling. It's only a 3-round fight compared to the 5 that Calvillo and I had, but again, mix it up, throw your big power shots in Barber, hurt her close in distance, and then eventually take her down and dominate down there as well. Again, I don't think Eye's, in her prime per se anymore, definitely not. I think Macy Barber's going to get it done. Again, she's only 24 years old. It's just she had all those expectations coming into the UFC because she was trying to break John Jones' record of being the youngest champion ever. Obviously, it didn't happen. And now, will Macy Barber ever be a champion? Probably not, but this is a start. I think she'll definitely beat Jessica Eye. I'm tempted to take a finish in this one. I'm tempted to take Barber by third round TKO due to the ground and pound and the accumulation of damage that she will put on Jessica Eye in this fight, but I'll think better of it. I think she's going to win a decision because I can't bring myself to, depend on a finish from Macy Barber in this one, even though it is possible if she turns back to, what she was pre-injury and pre-Roxanne Modafferi fight. But I'll take Macy the Future Barber to beat Jessica Evil Eye. She'll get it done by decision. Could see definitely a third round TKO finish, but I think it'll be the wrestling out of Barber and the close power shots that she does bring is what's going to push her to victory over Jessica Eye. Yeah, this is a crazy fight and total fight of the night contender here. Robbie Lawler, Bryan Barberena is just buried on this undercard. What a fight, though. I mean, the former champ, a ruthless Robbie Lawler's back coming off his victory over Nick Diaz, and now he doesn't even get on the pay-per-view card. But here we go, man. Robbie's finally coming off a win for the first time since 2017. It's been a while, but yeah, he's back coming off a win. He's taking on Bam Bam Bryan Barberena, who's on a 2-fight winning streak, beating Matt Brown in Columbus in his last fight, and before that beating Darian Weeks by unanimous decision. You know what's different, though, about this fight than all Bryan Barberena's past fights? He will not have to deal with the threat of the takedown. Because Robbie Lawler, at least I don't anticipate a 40-year-old Robbie Lawler going in there, putting on his wrestling shoes and taking down Bryan Barberena at will. Because that's been what's, been stopping Barberena's last couple of fights. Matt Brown took him down 5 times. Darian Weeks took him down 4 times, even though Barberena was able to pop back up multiple times in the Weeks fight. And then Jason Witt took him down 8 times, fight that Witt ended up winning. Anthony Ivy, who's not very good, took him down 5 times. I mean, guys have been able to take down Barberena a lot. But what happens when you don't try to take down Bryan Barberena? I present to you the Vicente Luque fight, right? Remember how crazy of a fight that was in Ngannou versus Velasquez in Arizona way back when, one of the first ESPN Plus cards? By the way, free Cain Velasquez, please. But, remember how good that fight was? Vicente Luque did not attempt one takedown. Randy Brown didn't attempt to take down in that fight against Barberena. Now he knocked him out in the 3rd round in South Carolina, but still, that's besides the point. Bryan Barberena fights are nuts. They've been crazy even when guys are trying to take him down. Leon Edwards had to take down Barberena because he didn't want the constant pressure out of Bryan Barberena because he's always throwing, he's always walking forward. He's a crazy man on the feet. But you look at the fights against Matt Brown and Jason Witt. Those fights are crazy. They were fight of the nights, and yet Witt took him down 8 times, Brown took him down 5 times, and they still had a crazy war on the feet. Robbie Lawler is not going to bring down the other side. Lawler's not going to try to take down Bryan Barberena. At least I don't think so, right? I mean, I think Lawler's going to be standing there willing to trade with Barberena. I'm just concerned, can Robbie get his shots off? And will Robbie throw back at him? Because Nick Diaz was touching up Robbie Lawler. Say what you want, and Nick does fall off a cliff after the 2nd round. He does. Nick's cardio just shuts off after the 2nd round, and Robbie breaks his nose and beats him in the 3rd round. But Nick is touching Lawler. And if Diaz had more power and, didn't look like what Nick Diaz looked like at UFC 266, just physically wise, right? Maybe, a different guy beats Robbie Lawler there. I'm just saying. Of course, that fight was at 185. Robbie's going back down to 170. He's taking on Bryan Barberena. Now, Barberena and Lawler, they've always been on different sides of the spectrum in their UFC career. Lawler's always been at the top. He's been a top 15 guy. He's been a champion. Bryan Barberena has been a guy who's always been good on a fight night main card or as a feature prelim. He's always going to bring you a war, but he's never been treated really as a serious contender. And I don't think Barberena, in all honesty, is ever going to be treated like that serious contender in his career. That's okay, but in this fight specifically, it's a crazy one. Because if Lawler wants a chance in this fight, he will have to throw a lot of strikes. He will have to throw a lot back at Bryan Barberena. Because these two, again, are probably going to go to war. They're going to throw a lot back at each other. It will be a crazy stand-up fight. It will be a crazy one on the feet. We'll see. We'll see what we get out of Robbie. I'm hoping we get a Robbie that's willing to throw. But again, if Robbie gets hit as many times like he did in the Diaz fight against Bryan Barberena, maybe Barberena puts him down. I know Barberena hasn't won by knockout in a little bit. It's been a while. I mean, you got to go all the way back. I mean, when's the last time Bryan Barberena won by knockout? It's all the way back when he beat Jake Ellenberger back in 2018. But Barberena will throw hard. He will throw big shots. We'll see what happens. Robbie Lawler hasn't knocked anybody out. Well, I mean, he knocked out Nick Diaz, but other than the Nick Diaz fight, his last knockout win goes all the way back to when he beat Rory McDonald in the fight of the century at UFC 189, right? So we'll see what we get out of Robbie Lawler. He's 40 years old. Are we expecting much? No. But I still think Robbie Lawler is able to finish Bryan Barberena in the third round. I think it's a crazy war on the feet. Like, everything points to this fight being absolutely nuts. Because you know Barberena is going to get in his face. You know Barberena is willing to take a punch. He's going to come out there and he's going to strike with them. And finally, again, this is an opponent in Robbie Lawler that Bryan Barberena is facing that will likely not take him down 8 times a fight. He will likely not attempt 20 takedowns because he's willing to engage in a striking war with Bryan Barberena. Robbie Lawler knew what he was signing up for when he signed the bout agreement. He knew that this fight was going to be nuts. He knows what a type of fighter Bryan Barberena is. And I think both these guys are going to throw. They're going to throw back and forth early in this fight. It's going to go to the third round. And eventually, though, Robbie Lawler is going to finish Bryan Barberena late in the third round. I think it'll be a razor-thin fight. I think you're probably looking at 1-1 going in the third. I'll give Bryan Barberena the first. I'll give Robbie the second. I think Robbie's going to turn it up going into the third. And I think he's going to finish Bryan Barberena in the third round by TKO. A 40-year-old Robbie Lawler picking up the victory. I think it's going to be a crazy fight. But again, we're going with the former champ and ruthless Robbie Lawler. Love this fight in the featured prelim. Brad Riddell taking on the Tarantula, Jalen Turner. And Jalen Turner's been on a roll recently, dude. I mean, the Kaliva win, the Brock Weaver win, the Urus Medit win, and now the Jamie Mullarkey win. And the Mullarkey win by far is the best one yet for him. I mean, knocking out Mullarkey in the second round. He looks really good in that fight. UFC 272. It's the featured prelim in that fight as well, or in that fight card as well. He knocks out Mullarkey, and Turner's striking keeps on getting better and better, and he's got all of his bases covered because his grappling's pretty good too. I mean, Turner's got some good jiu-jitsu. We've seen it with the rear naked choke victory over Urus Medic. He's able to do that to Medic in that fight. He takes him down, takes the back, subs him. Brock Weaver can't wrestle to save his life, but that's what he did to Brock Weaver too. I mean, he took care of business in that fight. Turner's so good at, implementing his game against different styles of fighters. And that's why I really like him in this fight against Brad Riddell. Now, I'm not going to give away the pick just yet, but Riddell's a guy who came into his Rafael Fiziev fight 4-0. And yeah, his first win in the UFC was Jamie Mullarkey. And Turner is coming off the win over Mullarkey. But Brad Riddell didn't do to Jamie Mullarkey what Jalen Turner did to him. Like, Mullarkey, even though Riddell 10-8s him in that fight, probably wins 29-27. Mullarkey does have some moments. He takes down Riddell in that fight, but he went 3 for 15 in his takedowns, and Riddell is able to weather the storm and, keep him on the feet and, just beat him up on the feet when that fight did take place up there. But you look at his fights after that. The Magomed Mustafayev, when he wins the fight, Mustafayev takes him down, goes 8 for 11 in his takedown, 7 minutes of control. Riddell barely edges out a split decision thanks to the knockdown he did score against Mustafayev in that fight in the first round. Then you look at the win that he's got over Alex De Silva. De Silva's able to take him down 3 times in that one, but again, it's just barely what Riddell's able to do on the feet is what gives him the victory. And then when you look at the Drew Dober fight, yeah, he edges out Drew Dober. Yeah, strikes Drew Dober. Okay. But still, you look at the Fiziev fight. Riddell and Fiziev was a close fight odds-wise. Fiziev knocks him out in the third round with that weird, wheel kick, but then it's a delayed knockout. It's a really good stoppage by Herb Dean. People crap on Herb Dean all the time, but that was one of his best stoppages on the Font Aldo card in December of last year. That fight was a war. It didn't, it wasn't like Fiziev and Bobby Green per se, but it was still a really good stand-up fight. Technically sound, that was a good fight in the feet. I think Brad Riddell, though, is going to get hit by Jalen Turner. Turner's striking keeps on getting better and better. His wrestling is good, too. So I think Turner's got multiple ways to win this fight. For Riddell, it's probably outstriking Turner to a decision. Doing what he did against guys like Magomed Mustafayev and like Jamie Mullarkey. But the thing is, unlike Mustafayev, Mullarkey, and Dober, Jalen Turner's got a really good striking game. He's got knockout power. He can, from distance, Jalen Turner is really good. He's 6'3". He's 6'3", 75-inch reach. Brad Riddell's got a 70-inch reach. He's 5'7". This is going to look weird. They're going to look like they're in different weight classes. Turner is a big guy for 155. I mean, hell, the guy when he came into the UFC used to fight at 170. He fought Vicente Luque in his first fight, UFC 229. He dropped down immediately at 155 to fight Callum Potter, But right, he's a big guy for the weight class. I think Turner's going to use his reach advantage. He's going to touch up or down the first round with the jab, and eventually in the second round, he's going to put him down and put him out. I'm going Jalen Turner, second round TKO finish. I think he picks up his second win in a row in the second round by TKO. Give me the tarantula Jalen Turner here at -120 to go to 6-2 in the UFC. In 27 professional fights, Pedro Munhoz has never been finished. Will Sugar Sean be the first one to do so? Because O'Malley's hunting the knockout. He wants to be the first one to finish Munhoz. Can he do it, though? I mean, Munhoz is a guy now who's 35 years old. He's lost 4 out of his last 5, but look at the losses. It's Aljamain Sterling who's the world champion. I mean, that's an incredible fight. Munhoz and Sterling throw back and forth in that fight. It's just a crazy fight on the feet that Aljo does win. Aljo couldn't get the takedown in that fight because Munhoz kept stuffing him, but Aljo was able to outstrike him. Frank Edgar, Pedro Munhoz. Edgar barely wins. Edgar wasn't able to take down Munhoz. It's something that a lot of guys aren't able to do because Munhoz is that good on the ground. And yeah, Edgar barely outstrikes Munhoz. I thought Edgar won. A lot of people thought Munhoz won. Whatever. It was a main event back in August of 2020. In the Jimmy Rivera fight, Munhoz wins. He fights Jose Aldo after that. Aldo beats him by decision. And then most recently, he took on Dominic Cruz, where Munhoz does drop Cruz in the first round. But Dom comes back, he regroups, he wins the second, third, and he wins the fight by decision 2-1. You look at Sugar Sean. O'Malley hasn't had trouble since the Chito Vera fight. And that's really the only fight Sean has ever been in trouble with. All of his fights in the UFC, outside the UFC, O'Malley doesn't usually get into all that much trouble. Comes in the UFC, wins 4 straight fights. He beats Eddie Wineland, gets the Cheeto fight, loses, regroups, beats up Thomas Almeida, beats up Chris Moutinho, destroys Raulian Paiva in his last fight. He's got a performance of the night bonus in every single fight he's been in the UFC except for his debut where he beats Terrion Ware. He keeps getting bonuses. The guy is good. He's got knockout finishes in all of his fights except for the Sokomoth win where he breaks his leg, the Terrion Ware fight, his first fight in the UFC. And I guess, okay, I was going to say Chris Moutinho, but I forgot. Herb Dean called that fight off in the last 30 seconds. That's what Sean O'Malley does. He's a finisher. He's gotten a finish in his last 5 wins. Can he do it against Munhoz, and can he beat Pedro Munhoz? Because Munhoz has got good striking. I think a lot of people are going to overlook Munhoz in this fight. The thing that makes it tough on Munhoz, he's going to be so much shorter than Sean O'Malley. Just like a lot of these guys are at this weight class, at 135, excuse me. Sean's just so much bigger. He's 5'11". He's always gonna have a reach advantage. And he's got power at 135 too. Munhoz has got power too, but O'Malley with a 7-inch reach advantage is gonna make it really tough on Pedro to close distance. And I always think that Munhoz is gonna catch at least 2 shots every time he tries to come in against Sean, because Sean's always gonna have the jab out there. O'Malley's always gonna throw the right. He's got, O'Malley's got such crisp striking. My only thing with Sean though in this fight is, he can't play around in this fight. Like, you see him in the Moutinho fight and the Paiva fight, he's, dribbling a basketball, imaginary basketball in between his legs. He can't do that against Pedro Munhoz, because Munhoz will make you pay. Munhoz, you saw the way he dropped Cody Garbrandt. I know Garbrandt's chin's not all there, but that's the point in time where Garbrandt still kind of had a chin. He doesn't have a chin anymore, but Munhoz is able to put away these guys, able to put them down, right? O'Malley cannot play around against Munhoz. He can't. He's fighting real guys now. Pedro Munhoz is a real top 10 name. It's the toughest challenge of Sugar Sean's career. And yet I still think he's going to finish Pedro Munhoz in the first round. I think he will. I think just look at the intangibles in this fight and look at the measurements on O'Malley, the reach measurements compared to Munhoz. He'll be able to keep distance. He's got the power advantage, I think. Look at the way he's able to finish Paiva. Look at the way he's able to finish Moutinho. He does get hit some, and I think that is a little bit concerning when you're facing a guy like Munhoz, because Munhoz does hit very hard. But I think O'Malley's able to get out the way of these big shots. I think O'Malley's able, of course. This fight will stay on the feet. Sean's going to use this reach advantage to his advantage, okay? And I think he's going to beat Pedro Munhoz. I think he gets it done in the first round. I think he's the first one to finish Munhoz. I really think I think O'Malley's really going to hunt that first round knockout, especially since Munhoz hasn't gotten finished at all in his entire career. Just something that Sean can have as he works his way up the ranks. And again, when you look back at the Cheeto fight, well, now Cheeto Vera's a fight away from the belt. He's about to fight Dominic Cruz. He's like number 5, and we got all over O'Malley when he lost that fight. The guy's still really good. He doesn't really get the credit he deserves because of the way he's hyped up, because of the way he's promoted, because of the way he talks. But still, I think Sugar Sean's going to win this fight in the toughest challenge of his career to this point. I'm going with him to beat Pedro Munhoz by first round knockout to move to 16-1 in his professional career. Miesha Tate has positioned herself perfectly to get a championship opportunity after just her first fight in the new weight class. Because you look at this division at 125, if she can beat Lauren Murphy. You look at the rest of this division, though. You look at the big challengers in this weight class. Manon Fiorot and Jessica Andrade are set to fight in September in Paris, France. And I think it's in San Diego, Arujao is going to go fight Alexa Grasso. That's in August, though. You got a while until those fights happen. Miesha Tate wins this fight if she's able to. They book her immediately against Valentina Shevchenko, likely maybe on the undercard to Aljamain Sterling and TJ Dillashaw, or maybe probably in the States actually, or maybe in Abu Dhabi in October, right? Tate's in an incredible spot to put herself in a championship opportunity like this, and they've picked her against the right opponent in Lauren Murphy. Because Lauren Murphy, I don't care, she got the title shot, whatever. Look at her road to the belt. it is one of the weakest roads to the championships you are going to see. Okay? It really is. It's a win over Mara Romero Barella. She's not very good. She finishes her okay. It's a win over Andrea Lee where she doesn't even win. Lee wins that fight. Go rewatch that fight. Andrea Lee's out striking her. I don't understand the scorecards at all in that fight. It was ridiculous. She beat Roxanne Modafferi, who's washed. She beats Lilia Shakarova, who, where's Lilia Shakarova? I don't even know if she's still in the UFC or not, but she beats Lilia Shakarova. She submits her in the second round. And then she wins the fight against Joanne Wood, which she doesn't win. Joanne Wood is washed, but Joanne Wood outstrikes Lauren Murphy. They gave her the fight because she landed some takedown. She landed one takedown in the damn second round, but I don't understand how you give her the first and the third round. She only wins the second. It's ridiculous, but they gave her the win. It was stupid, okay? Lauren Murphy got extremely lucky, and that's the nickname, on her way to the championship fight. She didn't win, obviously. Valentina destroyed her. But Miesha Tate can beat Lauren Murphy, and I think she's going to. Okay, say what you want about Miesha Tate. She's only won one of her last 4 fights, but look at the opponents. But still, she only won one of her last 4, and it's against a 42-year-old opponent, Marion Renaud. But Miesha's still shown that she's got it. And as long as she can make the weight at 125, which she has said she can, I don't think she's going to have many problems with Lauren Murphy. She's just not going to. On the feet, Lauren Murphy does not strike well at all. She's a very slow striker. Miesha should be able to beat her on the feet. And on the ground, I think Miesha Tate's got the superior ground game too. Lauren Murphy does have some wrestling, which that's why I don't think Miesha's going to be wanting to take the fight down there. But if she has to, I think Miesha is the better grappler. And on the feet, again, I think Miesha Tate's the better striker. Miesha's, her striking has always been okay. You look at the Kelvin Vieira fight, technically she does outstrike Vieira, even though Vieira does win the fight, but on the significant strike counter, Miesha does win. I think she's able to outstrike Lauren Murphy in this fight. Like, look at the clip where Valentina Shevchenko blitzes Lauren Murphy in the 4th round before she knocks her down and before she TKOs her on the ground. Look at that blitz that Valentina throws, and just look at the way Lauren Murphy defends. If Miesha Tate is able to be the aggressor in this fight, if Miesha Tate is the one pushing the pace and getting into Lauren Murphy's face, she's going to make it incredibly hard on Lauren Murphy to win this fight. If we see the Miesha Tate, which it's a weird thing to acknowledge, but you go all the way back to Miesha Tate, Ronda Rousey 2, back in 2013 on Weidman Silva 2. When Miesha Tate's getting into Ronda Rousey's face, she's throwing big strikes. It's an underrated fight, and something you just don't. It's a weird stylistic fight, but those two are just throwing and trading back and forth in the first rounds of that fight. If she's doing that, and yeah, she was reckless in that fight against Ronda because those two truly hated each other. But if she's reckless in this fight against Lauren Murphy, Murphy's not going to make her pay with the power that she has. She's just not going to. She's a slow striker that Miesha Tate can beat. And I think Miesha Tate is able to outstrike Lauren Murphy. On the ground, if Miesha's the one getting the takedowns, I think that's fine because Miesha Tate on top is probably able to fight off any submissions because I don't think Lauren Murphy's got too many submissions off her back. The only place I'd be concerned if I was Miesha Tate was if Lauren Murphy's the one getting the takedowns and Lauren Murphy is having success on the ground. And if Miesha Tate's cardio is down, her stamina and her gas tank isn't as good as it was at 135 because she's cutting the extra weight to get down to 125. That's the only thing I'd be concerned with. If Lauren Murphy is the one, in the second round getting a takedown, then okay, we're 1-1 going to the third. Miesha does look gassed, then maybe Lauren Murphy would be able to pull out a decision victory by winning that third and winning the last 2 rounds of the fight. But I don't see that happening. I think Miesha Tate's able to get into Lauren Murphy's face in the first round. I think she's able to outbox her, and I think she'll probably win the third round too. And even if Miesha does go to the ground, I think she is able to out-grapple Lauren Murphy too, again, because as long as Miesha Tate is the one getting the takedowns and she's the one being on top in this fight, I feel fine with her against Lauren Murphy. Miesha Tate should win. I don't think she's going to have too many problems. I'm going to Miesha Tate 30-27. She'll beat Lauren Murphy by decision. Give her Valentina Shevchenko. That one's not going to go well, but we're going to take Miesha Tate to beat Lauren Murphy. So she's already positioning herself. She's already angling herself to that fight against Shevchenko. It seems like Shevchenko probably wants it too because cha-ching, and it's an easier fight than the Tyler Santos rematch. And of course, Santos can't fight for a while because of the orbital surgery, I do believe. So Miesha Tate should be next. She will beat Lauren Murphy. She'll get them by decision. All right, here we go. Winner fights for the belt next at 185. We've got Sean Strickland and Alex Pereira. So intrigued by this fight because this can go many different ways. Truly can. Can Sean Strickland implement a game plan that's good enough to beat Alex Pereira? Because you know what Pereira wants to do. He wants this fight in the feet, and he's trying to knock Sean Strickland's head off. But can Strickland go in there and will he try to outstrike Alex Pereira, which I don't think is a good idea, but maybe will he try? Or will he do what he says? I'm not going to repeat the word that he said wrestling is for. You can probably find on Twitter or wherever on YouTube. You can probably find out the word he used. I'm not going to say because I don't want to get demonetized. Is he going to do that? Because wrestling is, in Sean Strickland's word, wrestling is for blank. Will he do that? I don't know. I don't know, because we know all that stuff from Sean Strickland's talk. Like, okay, he might be a psychopath, but no, he's probably a psychopath. But, like, everything that Sean Strickland says and everything that comes out of his mouth, like, I think it's a character, but then wait, but, like, some of the stuff he says, what crowd are you really appealing to, though? Like, there really isn't a crowd, pretty much, for what Strickland says. Maybe that just is Sean Strickland, but anyways, is he going to go against his word, or is he going to wrestle Alex Pereira? That's the question. Because if he does, okay, I think Strickland does have a good chance to win this fight, but if he's striking with Pereira, I don't see how he wins. Pereira is such a good striker, and it's not even like... Even when Pereira's not throwing at 100%, it's not when, and even when Pereira's not trying to knock his opponent out, you saw what he did to Bruno Silva. He wasn't trying to knock off Silva's head with every single punch he threw in that fight, every single kick he threw. And he still outstruck Bruno Silva for 3 rounds. A guy I think very highly of. I think Bruno Silva's a guy who will likely end up in the top 15 really quickly. And I think if Bruno Silva beat Alex Pereira, I don't think he'd be in the spot for, say, against Sean Strickland, but he's on that same trajectory, right? He's going to fight Gerald Meerschaert next month in August, in August, and he'll probably beat Gerald Meerschaert, Bruno Silva. But Pereira now is taking on Sean Strickland, and Bruno Silva, who's not known for his takedowns, the guy's a knockout artist, and that's why that fight was so impressive and so intriguing, is because, okay, well, Silva tried to stray away from what he originally does and what he normally does in the octagon. Will he wrestle Pereira? Will he try to take him to the ground? He did. At least he tried. He tried taking the Jeremiah Wells versus Blood Diamond approach, and it's like, okay, even though I'm a striker, I'm going to go in there, I'm going to try to wrestle him. Didn't happen. Silva tried to take him down the first round. He was successful. The second round he tried. He went 1 for 2 in the third round, which is the most important, most dangerous round, and the best round that Pereira looked. Silva goes 0 for 5, and Pereira just beats the brakes off him in the third round. Really works his jab well. Throws the cross too. Pereira's looking good in the feet. He's got really good stand-up game. I can talk for days about how good of a stand-up game Alex Pereira's got, but you know about that. It's just a matter of if Strickland's the one engaging the takedowns, if Strickland's the one wrestling with Alex Pereira, can he take him down and can he hold him down? Because Strickland, contrary to what he says, he's not a bad wrestler. Sean Strickland can wrestle. He says he doesn't train much wrestling anymore because, again, it's for blank, but he can do it. Look at the Uriah Hall fight. It's only 2 fights ago. He takes down Hall 4 times, 7 minutes of control time in that fight. He mixes that up with the striking that he's got. It makes for a dangerous fighter in Sean Strickland. It makes for a guy who, now would he beat Adesanya? I don't think so, but it makes an interesting challenge for a guy like Israel Adesanya if Sean Strickland is able to win this fight against Alex Pereira. But you look at his last fight against Jack Hermansson. Hermansson's not able to take him down. It's not like that, though, plays any part into what this fight's going to be, because Alex Pereira is not going to take down Sean Strickland. But Hermansson goes 0 for 8 in his takedowns, and Strickland is able to box him up, and Strickland is able to outstrike him. But the thing is, if he's fighting Alex Pereira, he's trying to box Alex Pereira, he's going to lose. He will either suffer the same fate Silva suffered and lose a decision, or he'll get his head knocked off like Andreas Michailidis did back at UFC 268, and Pereira will find some flashy way to knock him out and put him on his ass. Right? So this is why this fight's so intriguing. And then you go back to the original thing about Strickland wrestling. If Strickland does decide to wrestle, though, is he able to take down Alex Pereira? Because the UFC knew what they're doing with this fight, and they found the perfect opportunity to book Alex Pereira in a fight where he is 1 win away from getting a rematch or getting a third fight with the guy he's beat twice before. We're talking about the Stylebender, the Last Stylebender, of course, and Israel Adesanya. He's beat him twice. They're going to promote the hell out of that, especially in the press conference on Thursday. They are going to promote that Pereira's beat him twice before, and he wants a third shot, and he can beat him again if he beats Sean Strickland. But they found the perfect opportunity. Sean Strickland's the guy in the top 15. You look at the top 10 in the weight class right now at 185. You look at the top 10, and you just look at the matchups. So Adesanya wouldn't wrestle Pereira, right? Whitaker would. Cannonier, probably not, but still. Derek Brunson would 100% wrestle him. Hermansson would wrestle him. Till probably wouldn't. Gaslam would. Hall wouldn't. Imavov would. Muniz definitely would. Vettori definitely would. Tavares, maybe not. Chris Curtis would offer an interesting stylistic matchup, but you get the point. Meerschaert would wrestle him. Like, those guys are, even Phil Hawes, those are tough fights for him. Weidman's a tough fight for him because they'd wrestle him, and they'd really, and even Fluffy Hernandez, those are guys who would go in there and just try to consistently take down Alex Pereira, but they booked him right. They booked him against strikers. Silva, Strickland, even Michailidis to a certain extent. Though Michailidis does have a ground game, and he did control Pereira in that first round on the ground, kept him down, kept him grounded for 4 minutes. That's why, again, if Sean Strickland is able to impose his game, a game that We don't know if he's going to actually impose, though, but if he's able to do that, then he will be able to take down Pereira, and he will be able to keep Pereira down, I think. If Strickland is the one aggressing, or pushing forward with the takedowns, I think he will be able to take down Alex Pereira. My thing is, will he be able to do so? A. Will he want to do so? B. And can he find the range to get inside, level change, and then secure a double? Or a body lock by working in the clinch? There's a lot of things that gotta go Sean Strickland's way in this fight, and it only takes one from Alex Pereira. So I'm gonna go with the latter. I'm gonna go with Alex Pereira to win this fight. I think he's gonna knock him out in the first round. I think he's gonna catch him with something huge. It's either gonna be a kick, it's gonna be a knee, it's gonna be something. It's gonna be a big knockout that gets you on all the Sports Center top 10s. It's gonna be on all the highlights on all the MMA accounts on Instagram and all that. I think Sean Strickland's gonna find a way to get knocked out by Alex Pereira in the first round. I don't know how I think he's going to catch him on the way in, will Pereira. I think it'll be before even Strickland shoots in for a takedown, so we won't even get to know what the game plan of Sean Strickland was in that fight. But I think Pereira's going to get to him. I think Pereira knocks him out. I think Pereira's going to finish him, and I'm going with Alex Pereira to move on to the championship fight next. In his fourth fight in the UFC, he will get the title opportunity. He is going to beat Sean Strickland, and he will knock him out in the first round. Get that man that third fight against Israel Adesanya. We'll see what Cannonier does, but that is likely what is next for Alex Pereira. Here we go in the co-main event of the evening for the Featherweight Championship. It is Alexander the Great Volkanovski taking on Max Blessed Holloway. It is the trilogy fight, and here we go. Alexander Volkanovski, I've said it before, and I'll say it again, he is the best pound-for-pound fighter in the world. Alexander Volkanovski is the best fighter in the world right now. You look at his fight against the Korean Zombie. No one does that to the Zombie. No one goes in there and obliterates Chan Sung Jung like that. No one goes in there and puts a beat down on Brian Ortega the way Volkanovski put a beat down on Brian Ortega, and no one gets out of a triangle and a Darce in the same round from Brian Ortega like Alexander Volkanovski did. No one beats Max Holloway twice in a row like Alexander Volkanovski does, and no one beats Jose Aldo the way that Volkanovski beat Jose Aldo, completely neutralizing the offense out of the great Jose Aldo Jr. Now, this fight, though, between Max and Alexander Volkanovski is so interesting because by far, we have found 1 and 2 in the featherweight division. No doubt about it. Max Holloway, as great as he is the number 2 guy, though, in this division. But you look at the way that he beat Calvin Kattar. You have the 10-7 round in there. He destroys Kattar. He destroys Yair Rodriguez. But Rodriguez, though, in that fight, did have his moments. Let's be honest with ourselves. It wasn't the dominant performance I thought that fight was going to be. Obviously, Max takes over late in the fight. He wins. I thought he won 2, 3, 4, 5, and I thought Yair on the first. I can see the case for a victory, or just to giving the round to Rodriguez in the second, but I give Max 2, 3, 4, 5. I think he wins the last 4. There's the one time you're probably going to hear me agree with the Sal Diamato scorecard. I thought that was the right call in that one. Max did use takedowns in that fight, something that we haven't seen much out of Max, but in the third round, Holloway's the one taking down Rodriguez. In the fourth, he's taking down Yair as well. It's not something, though, he's going to be implementing in a game plan against Alexander Volkanovski. It's just not what he's going to be doing, because Volk, obviously, is a better wrestler. Between Volkanovski and Holloway, and that's what I think a lot of people go back to in their second fight is, okay, there's the takedowns from Volkanovski at the end of the rounds that secured him the victory. And it was late takedowns in the fourth and the fifth, but it's what won him those rounds. And Alexander Volkanovski, of course, retained his championship by winning those 3 rounds, 3, 4, and 5. I mean, you look at their first fight, it's an even fight. Alex outstrikes him. I thought Volkanovski won the first fight. The second fight, I thought Max Holloway won. I'll be honest with you. And I picked Max to win the first fight. I picked Volkanovski to win the second. I thought Holloway should have won the second fight, but what Alexander Volkanovski has done and what he has shown that he has improved on since that second Max Holloway fight is incredible. The way he goes in there and destroys Ortega, the way he goes in there and destroys Chan Sung Jung, his striking is so quick. There was a definite speed advantage that went Alexander Volkanovski's way when he fought Chan Sung Jung. The Zombie throws hard. He's got knockout power, but Volkanovski got out the way quickly. He was able to be in and out with his kicks. He's so good everywhere. And he's taken on the best boxer in the UFC, though, in Max Holloway. But it's a fight where we've already seen it twice, and Volkanovski's won the cards twice already. Again, I think it should be 1-1, but I know Volkanovski's made improvements since that second fight. Has Holloway? Because I think Max Holloway has always been capable of doing what he did to Calvin Kattar in 2 fights ago. Like, he's always been capable of doing that. When he was the champion, when he was beating Ortega, he was beating Edgar. If they lined up that Calvin Kattar when Holloway was fighting then, I think Max Holloway would have destroyed him just like he did when he outstruck him 5-1, and he landed like 500 significant strikes in that fight. I think he would have always done it to Calvin Kattar. The fight is concerning. I wouldn't say it's concerning because he still won, but Yair does have some moments early in the fight against Holloway. He wins in the first and second rounds. The second, again, I gave it to Max, but the first round goes Yair's way. And Rodriguez is in there with Max Holloway, and I don't really think we will get a great read on how good Yair Rodriguez is in his return until he goes and fights Brian Ortega in Long Island in a couple weeks, because then we'll see, okay, that's how good Yair is, but obviously we don't get that benefit now because Rodriguez isn't fighting for a couple weeks, and now Holloway's going up against Volkanovski. But my point is, I think Max would have always done that to a guy like Calvin Kattar. Look at the way he just destroys Brian Ortega. You know, the way that he gets the doctor's stoppage at the end of the 4th round, the way he goes in there and brutalizes Jose Aldo. Both these guys are so dominant at 145, and obviously it's the most even matchup in the weight class. Like, I know we're talking about Josh Emmett title shot next. Emmett wouldn't do anything against Holloway and Volkanovski. Holloway would do to him probably worse than what he did to Kattar, and Volkanovski would probably finish him in the 3rd round. But it's just that these two guys are so even. It's similar to Whitaker and Adesanya at 185. It's similar to Colby and Usman at 170. But what stays the same is a dominant champion in these 3 circumstances. The number 1 contenders are all great. Those guys would be champions in any other era. But in this era, it's Alexander Volkanovski's time. I think Volkanovski's going to beat Holloway again. What I was getting to in my point with Holloway was that he was always going to do to Calvin Kattar what he did in that fight, no matter the time. Like post 2017 Holloway, he would have done that, or post 2016 Holloway, he would have done that to Kattar. I think Max is still relatively the same fighter. I think he is, and I think no sparring is helping him out a lot. He's not taking too much damage in the gym anymore because Max gets into some barn burners, But I think Holloway is still relatively the same striker. He throws still some of the same shots that he's always throwing with his his 1s and 2s. I think Volkanovski's adapting as a fighter. I think Volkanovski's getting better as a fighter. He's becoming quicker in his strikes to the point where he might be able to match the speed with Max Holloway in this fight, and that makes it really interesting. And I think Volkanovski's got a power advantage, obviously. Volkanovski's got a power advantage. Holloway's really good at striking, but does he really knock anybody out? He puts damage onto people, but he wasn't able to finish a Frankie Edgar, who's pretty old in his career. He wasn't able to finish Kattar, even though he hit him 444 times. He wasn't able to finish Yair. He finished Ortega because his eye swelled up. But Max probably isn't going to be finishing Volkanovski. It's just a matter of, can he win 3 rounds in this fight, and can he beat Alexander Volkanovski that way? I don't think he can. Volkanovski's the pound for pound greatest fighter in the world right now. You're not going to win 3 rounds against this guy. He's too good. He's too good on the ground. He's too good on the feet. His kicks impressed the hell out of me in the zombie fight. His, the power shots that Volkanovski throws is unlike any other featherweight I've ever seen. He knows when to mix it up too. When he's going for volume, he can do that. When he's trying to, knock a guy out, you saw what happened in the 3rd round against Chan Sung Jung. So I'm taking Alexander Volkanovski to retain his championship. I think he's going to go in there, and I think he's going to leave no doubt that he is the number 1 pound-for-pound fighter in the world. He's going to go in there, and it's crazy to say, but he's going to win every single round against Max Holloway this time. 50-45 Alexander Volkanovski. It's going to be competitive in every single round, but at the end of each round, you're going to know who the damn champ is. Alexander Volkanovski beats Max Holloway. Holloway likely goes up to 55 after this, and hell, there's a lot of good fights for Max up there. I think he'd give Charles Oliveira a run for his damn money. I think Alexander Volkanovski would give Charles Oliveira a run for his money too, but I'm going to take Volkanovski to retain the gold, give it to him by decision. Again, 50-45 on all 3 cards. Main event time for the Middleweight Championship of the world. The champion Israel Adesanya, the Last Stylebender, takes on Jared Cannonier for the gold. And Cannonier's good. He's a good fighter. He's got power. You saw what he did to Derek Brunson in the 2nd round after Brunson gassed. You saw what he did to Kelvin Gastelum, even though it was a closer fight than many anticipated it to be. But Cannonier's good. He's got power. He can knock anybody out. But if I'm being honest with you, I think this is one of Israel Adesanya's easiest title defenses ever. I think it is. Maybe it is the easiest one. I think it is. Because I've seen Adesanya against the big power punchers before. I've seen him against Paulo Costa. I've seen him against Yoel Romero. He's neutralized them. He's weathered the storm, and he's won the fight. Jared Cannonier is not as fast as Israel Adesanya is. He's got more power than Izzy's got, but is he able to get in range and put down the Last Stylebender? I don't think so. I truly don't think so. The way Adesanya beats Whitaker, the technical striking match he gets into with Rob, which he wins for the 2nd time, the way he beats Vettori, the way he's able to, just absolutely, and the best performance he's had to date is the Paulo Costa win. The way he's able to finish Paulo Costa is incredible. The way he finishes Whitaker in the first fight. The guy is one of the best strikers you're ever going to see. And the one of the big challenges that Izzy faces in almost all of his fights is that whoever his opponent is going to try to usually take him down. That his opponents, want to go in there and probably bring him down to the mat. Jared Cannonier has 1 successful takedown in the UFC. Technically, he had 1 in the Brunson fight, but it's it was basically Derek was done. I mean, it was just Jared dragging him to the ground, it was just like, get off me, really. And Cannonier pushed Brunson down, then finished him with the nasty elbows on the ground, which looked nice, definitely, but not really a takedown. His only other takedown comes from back when he was at heavyweight, back on the Ultimate Fighter Redemption finale. I mean, what was that, 2017? Okay, so Jared Cannonier is not going to shoot him for takedowns. He's the one usually fighting off the takedowns when you look at when he fought Volkanovski, when he fought David Branch, when he fought Jack Hermanson, when he fought Derek Brunson, when he fought Kelvin Gastelum. Gastelum went 0 for 8, so I mean, there's no denying Cannonier is a good defensive wrestler. He is. I mean, it kind of shows you how good Derek Brunson is at wrestling too, but it's not going to matter in this fight. There's going to be no wrestling in this fight. This is a kickboxing fight. But I just don't think with Jared, I don't think he's able to close distance against Adesanya. I don't think he's going to be able to get close to Adesanya. I think Izzy's going to outstrike him for 5 rounds. I think we could definitely see a similar fight to what happened in the Costa fight, but I just don't think Izzy's able to put away Jared, because Jared is a tough guy out there. Jared is truly tough. But something that Izzy said something in his, when him, Kai Kara-France is going to be fighting for the Flyweight Championship, the interim belt, later this month, and Alexander Volkanovski, when they did a press conference, one reporter asked Izzy, like, have you seen something in Jared's game that you can exploit? And Adesanya said that he's looking to recreate similar to what Whitaker did against Jared Cannonier in the 3rd round of their fight at UFC 254. And there's something else to say. Like, Robert Whitaker beat Jared Cannonier. And Cannonier won the 1st round, I think, but Whitaker won the 2nd too. I mean, hell, right? I mean, Izzy's beat Whitaker twice, right? But it's the combo that Whitaker always throws. It's the left, I'm pretty sure it's the left, the right, and the kick over the top. It's the kick that he always throws at the end of all of his combinations, and he sat down Jared Cannonier and he almost finished him. Got really close to doing so. Adesanya is going to try to replicate that same exact kick. The thing with Adesanya is that he throws leg kicks, he throws body kicks, he throws head kicks. It's so hard to judge what the Last Stylebender is going to do against you. And I think this is just an advanced game for Jared Cannonier, and it's a puzzle that I don't think he's going to be able to solve. Adesanya is that good. He is one of the best strikers you were ever going to see in the UFC. He's the best striker since Anderson Silva at 185, and you can make the case that he's a better striker than Anderson Silva ever was. Adesanya barely gets hit. He doesn't get hit. I mean, since the Gastelum fight, he hasn't been hit all that hard. And Whitaker, you can make the case, maybe won the fight against Izzy. It's a razor-thin fight. I'm not going to lie to you. I mean, you can make the case for Rob 3-4-5. Okay, when I originally watched the fight, I thought Adesanya won. Then I watched it again. I was like, okay, maybe Whitaker won. I watched it again just the other day. I think Izzy won the fight. I think Izzy won it. I think Whitaker's got his moments late in the fight. I think Rob, of course, wins 4 and 5, but I give the 3rd to Izzy. I think Izzy beats Whitaker in that one to retain his championship. But, man, I mean, but again, what Rob did in that fight, though, was mix in the wrestling. Rob mixed in the wrestling in that fight, and there you go. Jared's not going to be able to do that. Izzy's going to be able to keep it standing, and Adesanya is going to get Jared Cannonier, a guy who poses no threat of a takedown in his world, in just a pure kickboxing fight. Adesanya's not losing this. The only way Jared Cannonier wins this fight is if he lands a bomb in the 1st round and somehow sits down Israel Adesanya and somehow knocks him out. That's not going to happen. So Adesanya is going to come into this fight. He's going to retain his championship. I think it's going to look a whole lot like the Paulo Costa win. Just like how he dominated Bohachinha, I think it's going to be the leg kicks out of Adesanya. Then he'll work his way up to the body. Then he'll work to the head. I think there's a very good chance Adesanya finishes this fight late in the fight. Just because I think Jared, again, I like Cannonier, but I think he's one of Izzy's easier opponents that he's ever faced, of course, in defense of his championship. But I'm not going to go with a knockout finish for Izzy. I think he'll win it by decision, but I think he's going to catch Cannonier multiple times with his kicks. I think that's going to be the big deciding factor in this fight. There's a reason Stylebender's a minus 360 favorite in this one. He's going to win the fight, and he will retain his championship. And still, Israel Adesanya, by winning every single round of this fight, line him up next against Alex Pereira. Let's get the trilogy fight, but this time in MMA in the UFC. So folks, that'll do it for our UFC 276 predictions here on the channel. If you haven't yet, though, make sure that hit that subscribe button down below for more. I want you to leave a like if you did enjoy the video. Give folks thank you for watching, and Mamba forever.